whether the team is performing clean or unsightly. We'll cover it all here on Washington Football Nightly. I, of course, am your host, Louie T. Thank you for joining me. Let's get to tonight's lead story. So earlier in the offseason, right around camp time, when the whole Montez Sweat thing started to explode, when he talked about he wasn't going to treat COVID until he got COVID, which he didn't really understand how vaccines work. I said, I don't want to talk about this. One, I don't care. Two, it's whatever, your preference is. Knock yourself out. I'm not here to be the COVID police, and I'm not looking to vaccine shame anyone. And three, we didn't have any issues with this last year, so until it becomes an issue, it's not an issue. That was my stance on COVID-19 regarding this football team. And now, okay, COVID is a problem. I said, I'm not going to address it until it's a problem. Well, now it's a problem. Officially, it's a problem. Washington is one of 4 teams that is currently in the intensive protocol stage of the NFL's COVID protocol situation, where everything's going to be done virtually. Everyone has to be tested every single day. If they do come into the facilities, Washington has an inordinate amount of positive tests now. The reason this video didn't come out yesterday is because the news just kept coming. Every time I started to want to get ready to do a video, another guy or another 2 or 3 guys tested positive. And so it was just this avalanche of news. And I was like, well, I'm just going to wait, kind of let the dust settle and the smoke clear. And I just wanted to kind of see where we were. And so there's been so much going on the last couple of days, whether it's with Dan Snyder, and we'll talk about that a little bit later on in the show, or with the roster, with injuries, with COVID, and just, all of the different things. Your head has to be spinning at this point. You're in the midst of a playoff push, and all of this nonsense is transpiring, and it's the worst possible time that it could arise. Let's take a look at all of the things that have transpired over the last 48 hours. It's been a crazy whirlwind of events. Let's try and, get everybody caught up and up to speed on where we are with this whole COVID-19 situation and the outbreak that's really ravaging this Washington football team roster. So if you've been following the beat reporters on socials, and I told you, they're the lifeline, they're the bloodline of all the information that we get, especially when situations like these arise. It is important that you're following the J.P. Finleys, the Ben Standigs, the Nikki Javalas of the world. They're going to keep you abreast of what's going on, the John Kimes of the world. So what you see in front of you is a smorgasbord, if you will. It's a platter of all of the tweets that have come out over the last 24 to 48 hours that have kind of kept us abreast of what's going on. And so yesterday, I was about to do the show, and we were up to 7 players that were on the COVID-19 list. Montez Sweat, James Smith-Williams, Casey Toohill, Jonathan Allen, Khaleke Hudson, and I think at that time it was David Mayo as well. Then later on, right before I was about to go on, Kendall Fuller, William Bradley King, and Tamarick Hemingway were added to that list. Then Tim Settle was added a little bit later on. And now today, Matt Ioannidis is added to the list. And remember, he had COVID last year. Okay, so now that number, as you can see, is up to 11. If you look at the Ben Standig tweet, he says at current, which you have to put it in apostrophes because it could change at any moment. The count is up to 11 players on the COVID list. As you can see, the 10 that Ben Standig had in his old tweet, and then you add Matt Ioannidis to that list, that makes it 11. He says 7 of those 11 are on the defensive line, as you can see. Montez Sweat, James Smith-Williams, Casey Toohill, and William Bradley King. 4 guys, all defensive ends. Then Jonathan Allen, Tim Settle, and now Matt Ioannidis gives you 3 defensive tackles for a grand total of 7 defensive linemen. We are absolutely as thin as you can possibly be on the defensive line. And then, the secondary is starting to be affected as well. The linebacker position has already been affected with Khaleke Hudson and David Mayo. Now you're seeing Kendall Fuller. We hope that that's where it ends with the secondary, because we can ill afford to have anybody go down in that secondary because we're already thin in the front seven as is. Um, and I don't like to make assumptions because this new variant seems to be, um, a little bit more. I think it's transmissible a little bit easier, and it doesn't seem to care if you're vaccinated or not. And that's what happens when you get variants. They mutate and they're a little bit more resistant to things that your body might have built up antibodies for. It becomes a little bit more resistant. That's why they're variants. They grow, they mutate, they change. But the assumption is most of the guys on this list probably aren't vaccinated. The only significance to that, and the only reason I even bring that up is because if you are vaccinated, there's still a chance you can play if you have 2 negative tests before Sunday. 2 straight days of negative tests, then you might be able to still play if you're vaccinated. If you're not vaccinated, it's mandatory you're out at least 10 days. You're not playing on Sunday. It's as simple as that. It's cut and dry. So that's the only reason I even bring up whether these guys are vaccinated or not. I think there are about 3 or 4 guys that I can look at. I'm not going to assume, but I can say in my mind, I know they're not vaccinated. I just, off of the events of the offseason and then, seeing them in post-game press conferences and them wearing masks tells me all I need to know. But in any event, then you look at, the last part of that Ben Standig tweet where he says 5 consecutive days with at least 1 player added to the COVID list. That is the thing that is scary if you're a Washington football team fan, is that every day it's another guy, 2 or 3 being added to this list. It'd be one thing if, we had 5 guys one day and then, another 5 the next day and then that was it. It's been a slow death the last 5 days. It's been 4 guys, then it was 3 more guys, then it was 2 more guys, and it was another guy. Now it's another guy. And the thing that's scary is that it could continue, and that's kind of where he's heading with that, is that, hey, now it's up to 5 straight days, and who knows, we might get 2 more guys later on today, and then tomorrow you get another 2 or 3 guys. And so this is the thing that makes it scary, is you just don't know at this point. So, this thing is really getting out of control. And then J.P. Finley throws a couple of darts into the dart, essentially saying, okay, my best guess at Washington's starting defense as of right now, Deron Payne and Daniel Wise at defensive tackle. Remember, Daniel Wise was playing defensive end for us just this past week. Now he may have to kick inside and play D tackle. Shaka Toney and Nate Orchard, who we just signed, and we're going to talk about that a little bit later. Nate Angry Orchard, it may be back in the mix as a starter at defensive end. Look at these guys. This looks like a preseason defensive front. You know what I'm saying? Like, what are we doing here? Linebacker Cole Holcomb, Jamin Davis, that remains status quo. Hopefully it stays intact. And then the back end, William Jackson, the third, Danny Johnson, Bobby McCain, Landon Collins, Cam Curl. If they feel good about, and again, we don't know what's going on with, the rookie Benjamin St. Juste. Remember, he was in the concussion protocol last time we checked. I don't know if they put him on IR or what. And then also you still have the corner that was injured earlier in the season that came over from the Detroit Lions. He may be another guy that's a possible candidate to step up and maybe get some snaps. So we'll see what happens. I like Danny Johnson inside. He may have to play outside, as you see. And it could get really interesting defensively. This is the wrong week for that because we're going up against a team that they don't really have a ton that scares you offensively, but they do have a quarterback that can run. And you need everybody playing on the same page, on one accord this week when you're defending a guy like Jalen Hurts. That's the way they hurt you, is on the ground. They're not really a threat to kill you through the air. And if you got a whole bunch of guys out there that aren't familiar with one another, that haven't been communicating all season long, you could have defensive breakdowns, you could have mistakes, and then next thing you know, Jalen Hurts is running for 117 yards. So this is the absolute wrong week for this. But then again, there's never a good week for this, right? So this is a really dicey situation. The NFL, they said at the beginning of the year before the season started, we're not reshuffling games around. If you decide to have players unvaccinated or you have a situation where you have an outbreak, that's on you. We're not rescheduling anything. And we're not the only team dealing with this. This is now a problem that is going to be, I think, for the remainder of this season, because I don't know if you guys have seen this where you live, but shit's getting real again. Like, I went to the gas station the other day, and a lot of, every store that you go to, they have a sign on the door, and the sign usually says something along the lines of, we would prefer you wear your mask even if you're vaccinated, but it's not mandated. Now I saw a sign on the door the other day that said, regardless of whether you're vaccinated or not, you are required, per state law, to wear a mask in this establishment. So we can see that it's shifting again, that COVID is ramping back up. These variants are starting to change everything. And this season was going along pretty smoothly. You'd get a guy here or there that had COVID, but they were isolated incidents. Now you're having outbreaks with, whole teams. And now you're having, a lot of, like, the NFL had its largest number of positive COVID tests on Monday, and that number was 29. That was followed up by 27 on Tuesday. And we're already starting off Wednesday with the Browns head coach, Kevin Stefanski, testing positive. That's his second positive COVID test. And word on the street was he's vaccinated, obviously, because he's a Tier 1 employee. Tier 1 employees have to be vaccinated. So he's vaccinated, and yet he's getting COVID for the second time, which means that variant doesn't give a shit about your COVID vaccine. So, again, he got it. Baker Mayfield tested positive this morning. Matt Ioannidis already tested positive this morning. And don't think that's where it's going to stop. So it's becoming a problem around the league. And right now the league said they have no plans on rescheduling the Browns, who play on Saturday against the Raiders. They have no plans to reschedule that game, even though the Browns have like 10 guys, just like us, like 10, 11 guys in COVID protocols, including their head coach right now. So this is becoming a league-wide problem. The Rams are another team that's in the intensive. They played a game on Monday. The Jalen Ramsey was out, but that's their best player defensively. Aaron Donald's their best player defensively, but he's right there as 1A, 1B. And he was out of that game. They had 2 or 3 other guys out, and then after the game, they had another 2 or 3 guys test positive. So, including Odell Beckham Jr., who had a big game on Monday night. So, this thing is starting to ramp up, and a lot of teams are being affected, and we're one of the ones that is being affected the most. And we'll see how this thing continues to go. The hope is we'll get some of these guys back, like Montez Sweat, for instance, and Casey Toohill, James Smith-Williams. These are guys that tested positive last week. So you're hoping maybe, just maybe, and in the case of Toohill and James Smith-Williams, their positive test came literally on the eve of the game. So technically speaking, they could miss 2 games if they're not vaccinated, and they have to miss a minimum of 10 days. They're going to miss the next game, because it wouldn't have been a 10-day period between when they tested positive and, the next game. So with Sweat, however, he was so much earlier in the week that his 10-day window will have come and gone. But again, if he's still having symptoms, if he hasn't had 2 negative tests in a row, despite the 10 days elapsing, he's still going to be out. So it'll be interesting to see what happens. Nobody knows anything. It'll be interesting to see what Ron says at his presser today, if he even has one. I would assume that it'll be a remote presser, probably from his office, because I would assume they want to keep everybody out of the facility. And he's going to be just as in the dark and clueless as the rest of us. He can't know what's going on, because every day it's a new guy getting COVID, and he has no control over the protocol and when these guys are going to be back. And so all he can do is coach up the guys that they have. And we're going out on the streets to get guys. Speaking of which, let's go ahead and transition into other news, where the roster is in flux right now. You're pulling up a bunch of practice squad guys. We just signed Nate Orchard back. If you recall, Nate Orchard had his biggest game against the Carolina Panthers. Coincidentally enough, that was the game Ron got fired after, when we went to Carolina and won back in 2019. And the last time we blocked a kick, I think it was Nate Orchard. I think it was against the Giants. So it's going to be good to see him back in the building because he did some really good things for us when he was here. But the fact that this man is going to come off the street, and he wasn't on the street. He was with the Green Bay Packers on their practice squad. But the fact that we're going to snatch him off of their practice squad and the man could potentially be starting on Sunday tells you just how perilous our situation truly is. So it is not looking good for the good guys right now. We're bringing up copious amounts of guys off the practice squad. We're starting guys that we had no intentions of even playing, having them even be active on game day this season. Nikki Javala had a tweet where she looked at the opening day starters, opening day roster, I should say, for Washington on both the offensive and defensive side. And she crossed out all the guys that were either injured or on the COVID list. And you should have seen the list. It was ridiculous. I think offensively, because before the season started, I think we had 26 offensive players, 24 defensive players, and then the 3 specialists was our 53-man roster. Of the 26 guys on offense, 25, 26, whatever that number was, at least 16 of them were crossed off, with the Ryan Fitzpatrick, Terry McLaurin, J.D. McKissick, Chase Rouillet, Sam Cosmi, like all those names crossed off that list. All these guys that have gotten injured, and that are not available as we speak. And then you go to the defensive side. Almost the entire defensive line was crossed out. Jonathan Allen, Chase Young, Montez Sweat, Matt Ioannidis, John Bostic, and the list goes on and on and on. Like, guys just crossed out left and right. And it's just crazy to see where we are right now. The fact that we're even 6 and 7 is a miracle when you think about all the injuries that we've had and the next man up moniker and mantra that we've gone with all year long. But I said at the end of the Dallas game, and this was before COVID hit us like a ton of bricks, I said, how many times can you go next man up before there's no one left? At some point, you go next man up, that next guy stinks. Like, you can't keep going next man up and tapping into your practice squad or guys off the street. Like, it doesn't work that way. Depth is only good when you don't have to go beyond your depth, okay? There's starters, then there's depth. We're past the depth, and now we're going into that dark abyss that you don't want to go into as an NFL franchise, where you start digging off of other people's practice squad and you're having to pull people up off of your practice squad. It's getting dangerous now. So all of this is happening at the absolute wrong time. Like, this, we could ill afford to have this, because you look around and you say, well, it's happening to the other teams. Well, I don't see the Eagles having any guys out from COVID, in the upcoming week. I don't see the Cowboys having anybody out for COVID. So yeah, it's happening around the league, but it's not happening to the teams that we have to play the next 2 weeks. That's for sure. So we're not in a good spot. This is a massive game. We have to have it. The Eagles are literally breathing on our necks at 6 and 7. They win this game, they get back to 500, and now it starts to really become an uphill battle and climb for us to make the postseason. So you need to win this game, and here we are battling not only the injury bug, but now COVID as well. So it's not a good look for us. But in the midst of that, there is one bit of good news. There is one silver lining, and that's Daniel Snyder. And I don't like talking about this, because I told you he's not going anywhere. So what difference does it make? Similar to the way COVID, kind of operated with the COVID situation. Like, I'm not talking about it until there's a reason to talk about it. I never talk about Daniel Snyder because I said he's going to own this team until the day he dies. And until something changes that fact, I'm not talking about it. If I feel there's something that comes along that may alter that plan, then I'll talk about it. Well, here we are. So let's start from the beginning. Let me give you some facts, or at least facts according to Louie T. I'm a massive NFL fan, but let's not make any mistakes about what the NFL cares about. The NFL cares about 2 things, okay? 2 things. Their bottom line and their image, what they project to the public, okay? You always hear the phrase, protect the shield, right? meaning protect our image. Don't do anything to embarrass us. Okay? And the reason that's important is because if you embarrass us, it impacts our bottom line. Okay, they're all about money. So the two things they care about, image and money. Bottom line and the way they are projected to the outward public. So perception, bottom line, perception and money. So those are the two things they care about. Everything else they care about is indirectly, okay? They don't directly care about the players. They don't directly care about the fans. They care about them indirectly because those two affect the other two that they do care about directly, okay? Fans, they care about us. Why? Because we spend money on the product. Without us, their product doesn't exist. So they need to keep us interested. They need to keep us stimulated. They need to make us feel like they care about us. They don't care about us. They care about our money and our wallets and our pockets and how we invest with our time, with our money, with our resources into their product, right? They care about the players, not because they care about the players genuinely. You know, a lot of these rules that they come up with, it's garbage. They don't care about these players. They care about these players indirectly because these players make them money, okay? And the minute one of these players does something to embarrass them, they're gone just like that. They're disposable. Next guy in, okay? So they don't care about these players. You know, they try to make it seem like they do. They didn't care about concussions until they got sued, right? Like, understand what the NFL is. They're a business. They care about their bottom line. They care about their image. So if a player is disrupting or a coach is disrupting their image, that guy has to go. He has to be removed so that they can continue to put out a good front for everyone to see. So I say all of that to say this. Daniel Snyder, the only way he's going to be ousted out as owner. Okay, so let me back up a second before we get to Daniel Snyder in particular, because I want to continue to hammer this point home so you understand where I'm coming from. The only reason the Redskins name was changed, it had nothing to do with it was the right thing to do or morally. I mean, we've been having the moral discussion for 2 decades, okay? That conversation didn't just crop up overnight, okay? They don't care about morals. The NFL has shown you that time and time again. They give guys opportunities to play in the league because, again, it's a money-making, it's a cash cow, it's a money-making venture. They don't care about morals. That's not what they're here to uphold, right? So, again, they didn't care about the morality of the name. They cared about the bottom line. When you had business partners like FedEx and Pepsi and all of these different entities ready to pull out, that's when the NFL said, hey, this name has to go. All right. So it had nothing to do. And then if you want to throw in the social change at that time, okay, George Floyd's murder, it was a perfect confluence, but it really was more about the money, okay? The George Floyd thing was just icing on top with a little cherry. That was just icing on the cake. All right. So it was really about the money. It was the financial backing that Washington was about to lose if they didn't change the name, with the stadium and everything. And the NFL doesn't want that smoke because, you know, the Pepsi and all of those companies, they're in bed with the NFL. They don't want to piss. The NFL doesn't want to piss any of them off. That's, again, money. We're talking about bottom line. So that's why the name had to change. So now fast forward to where we are now with Daniel Snyder. There's only one of two ways you get ousted as an owner in this league. And it's the same premise, okay? Nothing changes. The NFL cares about two things. Bottom line, financial means, and perception, okay? Jerry Richardson is the last NFL owner to be pushed out. Why? His perception of his situation with sexual assault and all that and misconduct, they didn't want that black eye and staying on the league. He's got to go. Get his ass out of here ASAP, okay? That's how the league operates. So they've already made sure that they've swept everything under the rug with this Daniel Snyder thing. If they want you gone, you'll be gone, right? Like they did John Gruden, okay? Roger Goodell and the NFL leaked those emails. They gave the New York Times everything, or the New York Post, or whatever outlet had that story. It was one of those New York outlets, Post Times. I think it was the Post, or it might have been the Times. I don't care. They leaked that information. because he talked about Roger Goodell and he talked about guys in that league office. And Rod said, oh, yeah, you feel like that? Okay, well, take this. And it was definitely a hit job. And I think John Gruden definitely has a lawsuit, legs to stand. His lawsuit has legs to stand on, and I think they're gonna settle, and he's gonna get some money out of the NFL because that was definitely a hit job, right? Like all of these pages of emails and things, and his is the only that gets released. But now the Washington football team has all of these emails over here that people want to see, public wants to see, and you're keeping that away from everyone, but you'll leak the John Gruden stuff, right? So it all seems like a targeted hit on John Gruden. It is. But they could control the narrative. They could say, no, we're not giving you anything. He's cool. He's fine. We already gave him X amount of millions upon millions of dollars to save his franchise, buy the rest of it from the minority owners, and now he owns the entire share of the Washington football team stake. But if Congress and the government gets involved and they're starting to become this groundswell. It's one thing when us as fans in the local market, Washington fans, we're isolated. The other 31 fan bases could give a shit. The national media could give a shit. They don't care. Okay, they're not the ones suffering with this insufferable owner. So no one else cares. So there's not this groundswell for get Daniel Snyder the hell out of here. He's a bad dude. Now they're starting to become this groundswell for, hey, this guy is a jerk. This guy is a tyrant. This guy is a bad human being. Let's get him the hell out of here. They're starting to become this groundswell nationally for it. And if that gets to the point, if it reaches that crescendo, he's going to be pushed out. And that's the only reason I'm talking about it. Nothing really new was gleaned from this Washington Post article that just came out where they were citing, Daniel Snyder doing this, that, and the third. We already knew about him potentially trying to pay off former employees. We already knew about him harassing people that wanted to talk to the investigators and trying to intimidate witnesses. We already knew about all this stuff. The only new piece of information was Daniel Snyder being petty. We already knew he was petty, though. But the only new piece of information we got out of this thing was the fact that Bruce Allen reportedly sent a congratulatory text to Ron Rivera when he got the job here in Washington. And reportedly, Dan Snyder was upset that he too did not receive a congratulatory text from Bruce Allen as well. And I'm like, really? Bro, you just fired me. You just tried to pin all of the struggles of this organization the last 10 years on me. And you want me to send you a congratulations text? Are you serious? But they have to understand who they're dealing with. They're dealing with a guy with little man, short man complex. We're dealing with a guy that grew up with no friends, got bullied in school. He's the kind of guy, Daniel Snyder's the kind of guy that got bullied when he was in school as a kid. And he said, if I ever grow up and become rich, famous, and powerful, I'm going to make that guy pay. And so he's the kind of guy that he'll seek out James Edwards, who picked on him when he was in the 4th grade, by the company that James Edwards works for, just so he can fire James Edwards. Like, that's the kind of pettiness that Daniel Snyder has in his body. So the fact that he was upset and all in his feelings about not getting a text message from Bruce Allen isn't shocking nor surprising to any of us. But the thing that article did was it opened the eyes of people who had been sleeping on this whole entire saga, that we've been following this thing the entire time. And I still don't think anything's going to happen unless those emails come out and we're able. And again, I still feel like even if the NFL turns over everything to the government, they're going to leave the stuff out that's going to get Daniel Snyder fired, ousted as owner. I think they're going to find a way to get rid of that stuff. But that's the only way. If those, emails are pushed out and they're allowed to be consumed by the public, and there are just some gruesome details as to Daniel Snyder with the cheerleaders, or Daniel Snyder, attacking witnesses, or having his lawyers or private investigators really intimidating witnesses and not complying with the NFL investigation. If there's something in there from way back in the day or something present day that could get him out, then that would be something that would really benefit the case to push him out as owner. But I still think we're a ways away from that. But the only reason I brought this up today, the only reason we're talking about it right now is because they're starting to become this groundswell for Daniel Snyder being pushed out as owner. He's not a good dude. This is, reprehensible. We got to get him out of here. We're starting to see national media types starting to push that narrative now on socials, like Mina Kimes. Okay, when you start getting people like that involved, and that narrative starts to get pushed a little bit further, and now other people start picking it up, and it becomes a big story, that's when the NFL says, okay, now you're becoming a problem. Now you're a source of frustration, and now you're a black eye on the league. Now you're going to start costing us money. Once you start costing us money, now you have to go. So that public perception, he's starting to really wear on the public perception of the NFL. He's starting to, beat down the shield, if you will. And they can take that, but only so much. Once it starts running into their pockets, and that's when you have issues. So we'll see. I still think Daniel Snyder isn't going anywhere. But I can tell you the heat is starting to be turned up in the kitchen just a bit. Just a bit. All right? And we'll see if there is continued momentum for pushing this guy out. But I can tell you this. Nothing new was really gleaned from the article, but if they continue to write them, if it continues to become a story, if Congress continues to want to get involved, eventually, maybe something will get done. So we'll see what happens. But it's been a crazy, 72 hours, really, from losing to Dallas to injuries to COVID to the Daniel Snyder story. It's just been a whirlwind. But you know what? Every time we take one step forward as a fan base, we get excited about something, we're winning games, we feel good, we're like, man, we're heading in the right direction. All of this, it's like a never-ending cycle. It's like this black hole. It's like a black cloud over us. We can never shake. And honestly, we know what the common denominator is. It's Daniel Snyder, okay? Until he leaves, until he's gone, this is going to be the perpetual cycle that we will find ourselves in, where we feel good about this, little ray of hope, and then all of this stuff comes crashing down. Now, the COVID, he has nothing to do with. He has absolutely zero to do with COVID and injuries. But at the end of the day, you can deal with that stuff. I don't want to hear about the Daniel Snyder stuff. If he's not going to be pushed out as owner, keep that shit away from me. But you can't get away from it. To me, it's bad enough we're dealing with, because all I care about is the product on the field. You know that. That's all I want to talk about. It's games, it's players. How do we beat Philadelphia? How do we beat that? That's all I want to talk about. That's all I care about. That's all I've ever cared about. Okay? Jason Wright, that's cool. The name, that's fun. I don't give a shit about any of it. You know that. If you tell me we change the name and we win, okay, what are we changing the name to? That all I care about is winning. That's all I want to do. But it becomes harder to do that, to focus on that, when there's still this over here and it's always right here. And that's the Daniel Snyder shit. It's always right here. And until that goes away, until there's no noise right here, it's hard to focus over here, because there's always something over here distracting you from focusing over here where the real action is supposed to be. And that's the frustrating part. But we've got COVID. We've got injuries. We've got more Daniel Snyder bullshit. Welcome to Washington. I am a Washington football team fan. Etched in burgundy and gold. My Washington spirit will never die. Washington spirit will never fold until we meet again. Hail to our beloved Washington football team. The hope is that we can go live tonight. Got a lot of things going on in this household, as you could imagine, with the twins and my wife and everything. So We'll see what happens later on tonight. But the plan is to try to go live, and I will keep you guys abreast of that. If it's not able to happen, then, you know, I will see you live on Sunday. If there's a game on Sunday, I mean, right now, if we play, we're probably going to get a mud hole stomped in us right now. But I've seen stranger things happen. But, boy, this is the week we should be playing the Giants, not the Eagles. To be golly, with the injuries we have, at least we would have had a fighting chance against the Giants, right? No Daniel Jones. They're falling apart over there. They've got their own COVID issues, and they've pretty much, you know, thrown in the towel in New York. But, man, you get an Eagles team coming off of a bye, feeling good about themselves. Yikes. This is not the week for this. But as a Washington football team fan, these are the types of things you expect. This is why when you want to get excited, you keep waiting for the other shoe to drop. This is exactly why. Because shit like this always, in all caps, happens to us. You get excited about Robert Griffin III. He has this magical 2012 year. And how does it end? By him snapping his leg in two and having his ACL, MCL, and everything else blown to smithereens, and he was never the same quarterback mentally or physically ever again. That's what happens to us. We get excited about something, and then something epic happens that derails everything that we're excited about. Well, you win 4 in a row. That's fun. You get your ass handed to you about Dallas on Sunday. We have injuries on Monday, COVID on Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. And then you throw in some Daniel Snyder bullshit. Why is this my favorite team again? I don't know. Stop asking. Anyway, that's going to do it for me, your man Louie T. Until next time, you guys, enjoy the rest of your day, and hopefully we'll be able to chop it up live later on tonight.
Here comes the diesel. Here comes the diesel. There's the snap, hand to Riggins. Good hole. He's got the first down to the 40. He's gone. The 35, the 30, the 20. He's gone.